break those up into a couple of juniors. In other words, about four juniors. Two of them maybe on the putting green. Two of them out at the driving range, which ours happens to be open only for golfers only. But there's definitely the challenges with the groups, and so with that, we're kind of holding off on that so that the golf courses themselves, it doesn't look like we've got that gathering issue look of it, so the golf course will remain open. So that's kind of what happened this past weekend. One of the things I know that I did was have that look to the parents, that we are adhering to everything to protect their juniors. I know this last week they started on TV anyways, nationally, started to talk more about, the kids and them getting this coronavirus and some of the implications, serious implications that has happened. So we use gloves, masks. We have the sanitizer there when they first come in at our tent. There's no adults that can join them now. They have to just get dropped off. They don't all walk together. And those are the things that we started practicing. Today, Jamie Mulligan has put together a really good kind of demonstrates what they do in a Virginia Country Club from the time the golfer comes to their golf course, as well as what happens on the teaching tee. So they will be talking. He will be talking about that today, as well as one of our other committee members' little project that he did. Tim Mitchell did a cool little project he's going to share today, where he reached out to a number of our teaching professionals and some well-known ones, and asked them a few questions, and the responses were very intriguing and insightful, and he will be sharing that today as well. I will go ahead and start and give it to Jamie. Jamie, thank you for that. I watched it last night and it was really good. So all yours.
Randy, first of all, thanks for you. These chats have been great, and you do so much for our association. And in doing this for a long time, we've needed a guy like you for a long time to do what you're doing for the teaching world, not only in the time of COVID-19 and this pandemic, but certainly with what you do throughout the section, which is so unselfish and behind the scenes. So thanks a lot for that. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Jamie.
Anyways, so people maybe know the story, they don't. We were at the Players Championship for the tournament, and it was a week that I'll never forget. On Tuesday of the event, they had a concert actually at the tournament, which we thought was a little bit peculiar with what was going on. And the next day they played, and then the players played, and we had a couple guys that played nicely, and they were rumoring that they were going to play the next day without fans, which again seemed peculiar in our game. And then so many things happened that Thursday, as you remember. No more baseball, no more hockey, no more basketball, and golf was canceled, and we came back to our property. And when we came back to our property, we were the first property in the country, and certainly on the West Coast, to close. And we closed out of an abundance of caution, just to make sure that everybody in our staff and the members and the guests that had been to the property were healthy and safe. And at that time, there was no such thing as non-essential. And our members, while they weren't pleased to hear that we were closing, obviously, the property, I think they understood what we were doing from a leadership standpoint. And then 4 or 5 days later, the non-essential orders went in and all the properties were closed. And you can kind of look back a little bit to what those things happened. But going forward, what we thought was the best thing to do was to start preparing for safe golf and what the game would look like as we got back into it. And so we started working on a document. I want to say that the sections with Tom and Nikki and everybody that works in this section office, they've been fabulous as always to work with, and we've always found that to be the case. And we got traction on this on the national level, and then obviously with our affiliation with Northern Cal and the California Golf Alliance, we've got inspired to do a bunch of work on that. And we had, as many properties did, we had to lay off numerous of our co-workers, and there was a core group that was still here, and a core group that was going to take care of the golf course, and our desire is to make the golf course better than ever. And then the rest of us were to try to figure out how to do golf when this thing ends. So that's what we've been working on. And we came up with a document that for our staff's like 40 or 50 pages, inclusive of complete IT and mobile access so people can tell us that they're healthy, whether they're a member or co-worker coming to the property, and all the different policies that we'll use in order to do safe golf. And anybody on this call is welcome to that document. We'll certainly share that with you. And then last week, in conjunction with the PGA, with Bryson and Anthony, and alongside Nikki and Tom, we filmed a safe golf document that's certainly welcome for any of you to get. It's a 26-minute video that basically shows how somebody comes into Virginia Country Club and how they leaves it in all the different elements, whether it's locker room, parking your car, food and beverage, approaching the first tee, the driving range, how you actually play, what we do with scores, etc. And the beauty of the videos, everybody's property is different. That's what I love about golf, is you never go to a property that feels exactly the same. We all have our non-tangible mystiques and our individual things about our property that makes us the way that we are and the way that we operate them. And that's the neat thing about what we do about golf. Ours is pretty obviously Virginia Country Club centric, but I think it gives you a general idea of what you could do, whether you ran a little tiny public golf course in the middle of Texas, or a high-end daily fee resort golf course in Florida, or any of the things that we do in California. So I want to thank SoCal PGA for the help in working with that. And we'll certainly send the document out. I'm here with Anthony from the PGA, and he'll make sure that everybody gets a copy of that, as well as our safe golf document. So, Randy, any questions about that? Or Tim, any questions about that?
No.
Not for me.
Cool. Randy, you want to go into Tim? You ready for that?
Yeah, let's share what he did.
Yeah, so Tim did something that was really, we keep getting asked this question all the time. Like, what should we do in order to be better at our craft when we get back to this? And in our mentality, we all thought, like, what do you do on a daily basis to get better? If it's a Wednesday, what do you do to get better on Thursday as a coach? And what are you going to do in 6 months to make yourself better? And I think this has given us all a lot of times to reflect on how we can be better at our craft in a bunch of different ways. And I think that's a goal to trying to be great, is how do you keep raising the bar and raising the bar and raising the bar? And I'm going to be candid with you as far as the teaching community goes, especially doing it on tour. We're all in business for ourselves, and we're all trying to compete against each other, but there's a nice little community and camaraderie amongst us all as well, too, that we're certainly all very proud of. And everybody has their different ideals and their different thoughts. And, when you're at a big tournament and it's on Saturday afternoon and you got a guy that's close to the lead and trying to win the tournament, and you're doing your warm-up with your player, there's 5 or 6 other coaches whose players are in the last group, and they're doing the same thing. And the language is totally different, and that which makes this great, right? There's laws, principles, and preferences that we probably chew on too much, but they're all important that we all know this. But then there's a preference in a way that we go about things that's really interesting. And Tim did something that I've seen kind of touched by Chris Como with his show as he's going around the country and talked to other teachers. But he did it as a conglomerative action with, I think he reached out to 25, 30 people, and he got 20 different responses to the same questions. And when I got that, I got a huge smile on my face, because first of all, I'm really fond of Tim. I think he's tremendous at what he does and one of the better professionals in our section. And I'm so proud of his West Coast allegiance. And then secondly, he was doing something that I thought was great, is he was making us all better by doing his data and his homework, and he did it unselfishly. So, Tim, first of all, can you tell us what prompted you in order to do this and to come up with this phenomenal exercise?
Yeah, absolutely. And Jamie, Randy, Anthony, everybody here obviously at this section, thank you so much for having me and giving me this opportunity to just kind of share share this little project. And, for lack of a better place to start, I just knew that we all had so much time on our hands in front of us. And what was I going to try and do to continue to try and make myself better? And it's been so cool because, obviously Josh with our section, with all the different coaches, chats that we're capable to continue to try and re-educate ourselves with. It's been a common theme, and I'm really proud of our entire industry for kind of leaning into that during this time. But I just was sitting around the house and just trying to figure out, gosh, if I had the opportunity to spend time, at least an hour, with some of the elite teachers in our game, whether they were alive or dead, who would those people be, and what series of questions would I ask them? What 5 or 10 questions? Because I think, at least for myself, I'm always sometimes a little bit intimidated. I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to be harassing or terrorizing some of these great teachers that we have the opportunity to pick their brains about. So 5 or 10 questions, an hour worth of their time. And that's kind of how I started leaning into this project. And, I had a couple of people that I would initially want to reach out to, Pia Nielsen and Paul Runyon, and for various reasons. But because I enjoyed that exercise so much for myself, I thought that I would start to reach out to other teachers that I either had relationships with or have had some kind of past experiences that I just wanted to see what their thoughts were. What are they leaning into at this moment in time to try and make themselves better teachers? And so that's kind of how this entire exercise came about.
Great. We talked about this a bit in our conversations, and I appreciate our conversations that we have about the game, but teachers don't want to share. There's certain stuff that we have. There's the secret sauces, and there's certainly stuff about winning that you don't want to share. And a lot of them are sharing in order to make a profitability for all of them, and everybody has a right to earn a living doing this. So it's interesting, the information that you get. But what I loved what you did about this is you made it so player-centric. And at the end of the day, we have to remember that, whether we're teaching somebody that hasn't played the game before, we're teaching somebody that's trying to get better at the game, somebody that has an injury, somebody that's making a comeback, or somebody that wants to play on tour, it has to be really player-centric. So can you speak about that? What did you find a commonality amongst all the teachers on how they kind of went back to what they were doing with their players and what their players would have said or what their players taught them?
That's a great question. I think there were definitely themes from each one of, I shouldn't say from all the people that I interacted with. And I think if I try and answer that right now, it might not necessarily be so player centric. It might be a little bit more of just different themes, and maybe I'll touch on that there a little bit first. So, for example,
sure.
There were, I would say that probably maybe 20%, 15 or 20% of all the people that I reached out to, they were more mechanically driven. They wanted to try and figure out, what was Mike Adams' secret sauce for, how he went through a screen and how he basically tried to figure out what was the right pattern to fit for that golfing individual. So maybe 20% of the people were kind of a little bit mechanically driven. I'd say that I love this. I thought the two old farts, I'll call them old farts, basically based upon the group of guys that I reached out to, but the two oldest guys that I had reached out to, Tim Berg and Jerry Moltz, both extremely well respected instructors. Jerry, I think, was the top 100 instructor for many years.
Mm-hmm.
He's out of PGA West now. But, they kind of gave more of an overall theme of, what does it take to be a great coach on any level? From a business perspective, from a coaching perspective, from a technical perspective, from different age groups, they would be great people, I think, for any kind of a newer golfer or a newer teacher to reach out to and get their thoughts about. So that would have been another example. Lots of people were really leaning into what are the observations that these teachers that have the opportunity of working with elite touring professionals, how do they prepare? How do they, how do they think? How do they rebound from bad experiences? How do they continue to learn? So that would have been probably another group of people that would have been part of what other teachers were learning into. And then probably my favorite last little bit about that is that a lot of golf coaches have so many life experiences that we're leaning more into, what do other great coaches do that are outside of our game? So John Wooden was mentioned multiple times. Some great soccer coaches were mentioned. Duke's Coach K was mentioned. So you heard a lot of different responses under that regards too. So I hope that kind of to a certain degree answers your question, but those were kind of some of the more overall and general themes that I think that I noticed throughout so many of the people that responded to my questions.
Yeah, it's very interesting too, like in getting to do what we get to do, how many technical questions we'll get about, a swing or a motion or a putting stroke, and what we do on the road. And I hear, are the other coaches on tour, they get asked that as well too. Like, and there's so many components and there's parts to it. I love hearing this stuff from Jerry Molds because he's obviously been around to continue to do this for a long, long time. And has done it on the highest level with the best players and have done it so much. So it's nice to hear this experience. I know this is a hard thing. This would be like picking your favorite Beatles song or Greek Island. But if you were going to say there was one sentence of summary, what was the sentence of summary that tied everybody together? And can you answer that? If not, no problem.
Yeah, no. And I think, I might even actually, because I saw he was on here a little bit earlier today, but I think the one thing that really resonated and was so much fun for me, and I want to be able to pass along this information to any of you who are out there that want to kind of listen to this or see the results and be able to read them yourself and listen to one clip. But Alan Ochiai, at the end of our interaction together, just said, boy, this would be so cool. Will you share with me your findings? And so, what that just seems to share with me is just how many people just, they want to keep getting better at this game. They want to be better communicators. They want to be better teachers. And I felt like you get that that overall theme from everybody with all of their questions that they responded to.
Yeah, that's great. And by the way, Alan, what a fine teacher and what a guy that's always been kind of searching underneath the rocks or in the books or anyway in order to continue to do the good things that he does. So I'm not surprised that he asked that. One thing that I wanted to say to everybody on the call, this is more of a comment than a question for Tim, but don't you think, or I think personally, it's our responsibility to make everybody better at this game, whether they're taking a golf lesson from you or they're trying to become a student of the game. And there's no key as far as that goes, meaning you should be able to open the doors and be able to share what you want. Obviously, there's some attorney-client privilege and what you get to do, certainly at the highest level, but for the most part, the more that you share the information, the better that you make the whole game. And if you really think about what's going on in this pandemic, the fact that you learned how to teach golf, because there's so many people that are teaching golf on video right now or in FaceTime sessions, or they're trying to figure out how to make their academy or their club better. That's stuff that they've all got from a bunch of data, and we've all done that together. I know that Randy's been instrumental with that as far as, and Tom Addis as well, and going back to Todd Kiefer and now with Tony with the California Teaching and Coaching Summit, that we're here to share information to make us all better teachers. And when you look at the unemployment rates that are going on in the country, everybody that's on this phone call is probably able to make minimum $100 an hour giving a golf lesson, and we will play golf again. So that's more of a comment. Keep trying to get better at your craft and get better at it every day. Tim, I wanted to ask you a question just about a few of the people that were on there, and then I know you have some questions for me as well too. So first of all, you got to work in the Ledbetter Academy. Obviously, Ledbetter was maybe the first really modern day teacher, or one of the Jim McLeans or Hank Haney and that crew. Butch Harmon, that took his skill to the next level and made the tour coach really popular. He had two crazy different guys with Nick Price and Nick Faldo. Patrick Cantlay's caddy actually is Nick Price's old caddy, so I've seen Nick's big Bible on golf, and I know Faldo and a lot of talkings about his stuff, and I've got to watch Ledbetter on the road for years. Why don't you talk about your relationship with David and then David's responses a little bit, please?
Sure, absolutely. So I was lucky enough to work for David for close to 10 years. One of the things that I think is so important to share about, maybe somebody that is really, to a certain degree, I don't know if a better term for it for right now, but one of the first rock stars, right, of what we do. I was really amazed and impressed the first time that I met David that he just was really down to earth. He's this quirky kind of just fitness oriented, kind of, way too long limbed human being that is just a really, really good guy. And, just out of proportion, crazy, small chest, all these other different kinds of things, but just a wonderful human being. And you could see when I went through my training with David, the first I think the moment that I enjoyed watching him the most was actually in a huge corporate event where there was probably 200 people at Champions Gate, which is his his major academy, worldwide academy around the world. And just how he was able to interact and just watching 3 swings, 5 swings a person, and just immediately going in and giving them, great medicine, great feedback, great information that was really impactful. So I've always been a great fan of David, and David really helped me understand cause and effect. And that's really been his, at least for me, how he really was impactful to me. And I probably reach out to David, 2 or 3 times a year. If he's had one of his students that has a big win, I want to obviously congratulate him. A couple times a year, I'm always just, saying hello and what's going on. And so it was really cool how quickly he responded, because he was actually the first person I reached out to. And he had some really interesting thoughts. And, maybe I should share with the group here that, and I don't know if I did this previously, but I wanted to be able to ask anybody that was alive or dead. And, David wanted to talk to somebody who was dead, which I thought was pretty darn interesting. He wanted to speak to Henry Cotton. And for those of us who don't know Henry Cotton won the British Open 3 different times. He was one of the elite teaching professionals who was also a player. And, if anybody obviously has studied David's teaching at all, it's so much more of a body-oriented kind of concept for teaching. And Henry Cotton basically taught almost the exact opposite way. So it was interesting to see that David was really kind of leaning into, a very different style of his own and a very different era of his own. And so that was probably one of my favorite pieces about how David responded to that.
Great answer, and that's really good insight on that. And one of the things that kind of stuck with me that you said earlier when you started to describe David, and I think this is for everybody on the call, but that's something you can do to make yourself get better, because we're trying to all get better. And I think David's been one of the masters of that. Is if you had somebody and you could watch them make 4 or 5 swings or 4 or 5 chips or 4 or 5 putts, how would you profile them and what would you say to them first in order to make sure that you told them exactly the right thing? And that's kind of the nature of what we do, right? When you got to look at it, we're all doctors. And so your job is to go in there, decide that you're going to do surgery, not to sound too dramatic, try to figure out exactly the right cause that you want to do, make sure that they can leave better than they were before. And that's how you build a relationship with that. And interesting enough, kind of in what we do, we haven't taken on a player in a long, long time. A lot of tour player coaches get tour players after they become tour players, and we've kind of homegrown everybody. So when people have called us because we oversee this country club, we don't have time to do that. But I'll talk to the players a lot of times, and when they'll tell me about their going around and trying to find a coach to work with. I think this is one thing that always interests me is you'll get players at the highest level that will go down a couple, 3 or 4 year path trying to do what the teacher wants to do, but it never felt exactly right to them. And that one's always been kind of peculiar to me. And even more so when you talk to a lot of amateurs, I'll say, well, how you doing? They'll say, well, I went on a trip last year to Vail and I took a golf lesson. I said, well, did it help you? And the guy said, well, I hit a couple good ones, but I did some other things. And it might have been the complete opposite thing that you might have told them. So I really think about that. Our job is to get that information as quickly as possible and make sure that it's the right information. And you can practice that by going to not your range, go to a public driving range and sit on the public driving range. And imagine if you got to go up to that person, how would you profile them in a minute and what would you tell them to immediately make them better at any part of their game? Next question, Tim. Fred Schumacher, well, that was very entertaining, his audio portion. I think we'll all get to hear that. Can you give everybody just a brief summary of that and talk about that?
Yeah, Fred's a really, he's such a thoughtful human being. I almost, don't think that I'm just trying to think of the right way to describe him for those of us that haven't watched him before, haven't had the opportunity to just investigate some of his teachings. But that would be probably my first thought and comment, is that he's an extremely thoughtful, mystical to a certain degree kind of individual. And his response was really cool. And maybe this kind of resonates based upon what I just shared there, because, I think one of the things out of a very consistent concept that I get from Fred, as I have been lucky enough to interact with him over the last year or so, is that he is always encouraging everybody to place a mirror in front of themselves and look deeper into that image. And, see places where you can improve, see places where you can just try and take away the layers of our public persona that we try and portray. And, so I don't know if I'm doing a great job of sharing this, but he's just, he's mystical. He's a very unique and interesting individual. But anyhow,
keep going with the mirror, please. Like, I think that's key. Keep going with the mirror.
Okay.
Expound more, please.
Yep. So, I think that, because with every one of these golf instructors that I reached out to, guys, if whatever they shared with me that really resonated with me, and I wanted to have another response, we would go back and forth 2 or 3 or 4 different emails, 2 or 3 or 4 different conversations. So, and most of this, I should say, was conducted via email. And so if I go back to that, that's a theme that Fred takes a look at a lot, because he wants people to be genuine. He wants people to be authentic. And if you're not genuine or authentic, he's not really interested in what you have to say or what you do. So I think part of the process of being able to look into a mirror and see exactly what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what your public persona is. Those are things that Fred wants all of us to really spend a significant amount of time trying to evaluate our own self and how can we be better. And so I don't know if I did a great job of explaining that, guys, but I think you'll have.
Hey, Tim.
Yes.
How do you have this to share? I know you had you popped up a little message there. Is it just through emailing you, or is there any kind of a link? Can you do that one more time for everybody that's on the call here? It's just email you and you'll send them the responses of this.
Absolutely, Jamie. And so, guys, I sent out a chat to everybody. Hopefully everybody got it. But if you, I'm happy to send this to everyone. I don't have it set up as a link, Jamie. I don't know exactly how to do that, but I can at least forward the PDF file that I created, guys, as well as the audio file. And just my email address is tim@timmitchell dot Moby. So it's MOBI for short for mobile.
Hey Tim, just real quick, we send a post recap every after these links, so we'll include the link in that email. So for everyone on this call, we'll include a link to any pertinent information at this call.
Yeah, Randy and everybody on the call, that would include anything that was done today, the Safe Golf document, the video, and all the stuff that Tim did as well, too. Tim, you said something in the last thing. I have kind of two questions, and I know we're going to switch roles a little bit, okay? So
yeah.
One of the things that you said I thought was really interesting about the looking in the mirror, people always ask me, like, if you could eliminate one thing from a player, what would make them better? And the mirror is such a good way to look at it. And I always say insecurity. And insecurities are really interesting in what we do for a living, right? Is the insecurity coming from their mind, their body, or their spirit? And, you know, a lot of your jobs, especially as you get more with the player and they become a competing player, like I can tell you that at being at many tournaments, you know, for the last 30 years on a Sunday, they're all nervous. And for that example, they're all kind of nervous on Tuesday before the tournament. And there's insecurities and there's things they're worried about. And as they become better, they still have their insecurities, but they're less and they realize how to do with them. And I think the mirror is a big thing. And so think about the player that you get that's never played before and they walk out and they're holding their bag awkwardly and they come up to the range and they want to take a lesson from you and you're the golf pro and, you know, the third thing that you do is hit a shot for them and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to do that. And so I always think about that. Remember that you're dealing with insecurities and we all have them and our job is to get rid of them so we get better at what we're going to do. I think, Anthony, we have a question. You want to put that question out, please?
Yeah, Bill Colbert just wrote in. It was more of a comment. Just had the opportunity to play golf with Fred Schumacher when I lived in Santa Barbara. One of the best ball strikers I've ever seen in person. So thanks, Bill, for that comment.
Yep, that's good to hear it. And I think then there was somebody that also said, what was the most interesting, I think, or...
Yeah. So, Tim, just curious here, what was the thing that surprised you the most of the answers you got back?
Oh boy. And you know, you guys, you're going to all have. I hope, and this will be probably the greatest thing about this exercise is that you'll be able to see all these teachers, and you'll be able to just kind of get a small look into what they're thinking, where they're at right at that specific moment in time. You know, that probably one of the things that surprised me a little bit the most was just how many people were leaning into Jack Grout. You know, I love this to a certain degree because you know, Jack Grout, from what I understand, I believe Jim Hartnett shared this with me. He never went to a tournament. He never, you know, he was not, he was all about just preparing his golfers and then letting them go and do their own thing. And that's obviously just so different now compared to the tour coach phenomena that we have. But there was a number of people that were really interested in Jack Grout. And I myself really don't know much about Jack. So it was a great place for me to be able to just kind of learn a little bit more about him. And that'll probably be what I would share.
An interesting thing on that one is when Patrick Cantlay won the Jack Nicklaus Award, we got to go back. And I had met Jack probably in every decade a little bit. But when Patrick went back for the award, it's kind of a cute story. Patrick called me on Saturday, said I won the Nicklaus Award. And I said, that's cool. And he said, well, congratulations. And I said, when do you get the award? And he said, it's tomorrow. And I said, at Muirfield? It was during the memorial. And he goes, yeah. And he was leaving NC2As. And he goes, can you come? I'd love to have you there, you know? So I go, yeah, I can come. So I red-eyed to Columbus that night and, you know, walked Patrick around the Dry Range Memorial and introduced him to some of my friends on tour. And then we went in for the Nicklaus Award, which was very, very cool. They have this big, giant media room that's underneath the clubhouse at Muirfield. That's like a movie theater. And so then we got to spend some time and talk with Jack. And then right after we left, told Patrick, what do you want to do now? And I said, you know, you got to qualify for the Open. He goes, yeah, I forgot to tell you, but I need you to caddy for me tomorrow. And so I'm like, so you had an agenda on this, and we laughed about that. And then as we were getting ready to play the next morning, he said, if I qualify, will you caddy for me in the Open? I said, yeah, of course I will. Sure we will. So we went out there, he played at the tour site, played really nice, almost won the qualifying, played in the Open, was the first guy since Nicholas to shoot par or better in the Open. And we developed this really nice relationship with Jack, and Jack was really, really, really gracious to Patrick from the get-go. And now Patrick's a member at Bears Club down in Jupiter, and whenever we're down there, he treats us great. And Patrick basically has his ear, and I think a lot of you saw that when he won at Memorial. And I've picked Jack's brain a lot about Mr. Grout, obviously, too. And Jack said something really funny. He said, yeah, Jack never went to a tournament. He said, now the player, he's got, 7 guys with him. He's got a physio and a trainer and a putting coach and a swing coach and a sushi chef. It just cracked me up. And he goes, Jack never saw me anything except for in my events when I was actually playing. So the world has changed as far as that goes. Do I think it's right to go to a tournament? Yeah, I think you got to watch your players play, but pretty neat that he built, in a lot of people's minds, the greatest player of all time without ever going to an event.
Hey, Jamie, what's easier, coaching or caddying?
Coaching or caddying. I don't want to caddy any longer, but I can tell you there's something from the competitive side of you with caddying. You feel like you get a little better look, and I can also tell you, I watch a lot of tournament golf, but it's hard to tell what they're saying and hard to tell exactly how they're acting. And my players are pretty good at hiding their emotions when they're out playing. But when you're caddying and you got 152 and you give them a golf club that's supposed to go 152 and it goes 158 and it goes over the green and they make a bogey, it's pretty interesting to see what goes on. And I think that's really, really great. And then, Tim, I want to kind of click out. We got one comment from Brian Bullig, and I think it basically said he. Can you read that, Anthony? What he wrote?
Sure.
Thanks, Brian.
Brian just says, comment for Tim. Loved how all the coaches responded with really thoughtful and open-ended questions. A great reminder for all.
That's Tasha. She stole Brian's phone. Yeah. Go ahead again, Anthony. Sorry.
Yeah. So in regards to the open-ended question, it's a great point, right? Because I think the greatest teachers are really trying to ask questions of their students and trying to have them analyze and come up with an answer themselves, as opposed to maybe just giving all the answers, right? So maybe that might be a little bit of where that comes from. So thanks for the question, either Brian or Tasha.
Well, and this might be a time. Do we, Jamie? Do you have any more additional questions for me, or should we turn?
No. I think we're set. But you gotta repeat the question if you want me to answer it. I'm still impressed that Tasha has Brian's phone. That hasn't worked in my household very well yet. Anyhow, go ahead. What was the question?
All right, great. Well, guys, before I ask you here, too, real quick, Jamie, Jamie was the second person I reached out to, and you guys will see that over multiple days that Jamie went above and beyond, in my opinion, of responding to my questions. And so I've even shared that with Jamie as we've talked on the phone a couple times too, that just been really thankful and really thankful for how open that you're willing to be to share some of this information with us. And so, I don't know if you're going to remember your response here, Jamie, but one of the places that you were so thorough, that you were so going the extra mile for me, is that you responded with 2 different coaches. 2 different coaches. And I don't know if you wanted to try and just share with the guys that you were one of the guys that asked about Jack Grout. You were also one of the guys that wanted to spend some time with Butch Harmon. And so I don't know if you want to kind of expand upon that a little bit about what kind of questions that you would want to ask those guys. what comes to mind now, because I'm sure you probably aren't going to remember anything verbatim what you discussed. But
Yeah, I'll let you keep. I'll let you keep going. So
start.
I'll let you keep going. I remember what I said, but I'll let you keep go. Go ahead and keep going.
Okay.
Specifically.
Okay, specifically. All right, great. So, I think maybe one of the cool things that I'd love to have you respond to is, the first question was, how young was Nicholas when you realized he was going to be great? And did you know he would be great? And, I know that you've worked with Amy Alcott for a long period of time, and maybe you'd even want to share that with some of your other players. But when you get the opportunity to see one of your younger players, what's an example of somebody that's okay, I know that person's going to go is going to be very special?
People always use that word, the X factor. And what is the X factor? Is that everything? Is that they're the best ball striker ever? Is that they're the calmest person? All the X factor is that just something special when you're watching a basketball game and there's 10 players on the court and one of them looks like they have the X factor and they get the game a little bit more. And then when you see them off the court and you talk to them, it seems like they get the game a little bit more and they get life a little bit more. And I probably have had the opportunity in my charmed golf coaching life to work with 1,000 players that could probably play on tour, of which we've got to help, 15 people get PGA or LPGA cards. And, they've all won at every level. And to watch them, and a lot of them since they were babies, they had that X factor. And the X factors are different in the way that they are. Like we were doing this thing called the mask sessions where we were sending out with us with a mask on, talking about one of our players' swings and why. And I just did John Merrick, the only kid that was born in LA County to win the Los Angeles Open. And we started teaching him when he was 10 or 11 years old. And John had the X factor in the way he went about it. Like I used to wait for John to come to the club, whether we were at Coyote Hills or we were at Skylinks or we were at Virginia Country Club, and drive in either with his mom, think about what I just said there, or park his car at Coyote Hills, which was an old beat up Honda, or driving in his nice car that he got after he won a tournament at Virginia Country Club, and watch him pull his clubs out of the car, and how methodical he was about it, and how clean his golf clubs were, and where the towel was, and the way that he put his shoes on, and the way that he walked to the putting green, and the way he set his bag in the same exact place. And he did the exact same drills, and in our language with each other, it was completely consistent. And the way that he conducted himself off the golf course was really, really similar. So he never had to be anybody different than John Merrick. Sometimes after coaching him for a long time, I wish there were parts of him that was more not that, but in a lot of ways, I just totally appreciated that. So the answer to your question is, yeah, from a really young age, I think that we've got the idea with our players that they have the ability to go to the next level. And to answer even and expound on that question a little bit, of those 1,000 people I've worked with, probably 900 people that definitely have the talent to do it, and some of them more than the 15 that have made it and been really good, but they didn't have all of that. And then when you start to turn it into like an Amy Alcott that won 29 times, is in the World Golf Hall of Fame, learned to play golf in a indoor driving range with Walter Keller. Like I caddied for when I was a young kid, and we did this in our answer. The first hole I watched her play, I've never seen anybody more intent on hitting their ball to a spot, and then hitting their next shot to a spot, and then trying with all their effort in the most comfortable way to make a putt, and then going to the next hole and not settling for anything more except for eagle, birdie, or par. I've never seen anything like it. And Amy physically might not have had all the things that a bunch of different players did, but if you spent 5 minutes with her or listened to her in an interview, you realize that she was going to be great. So that's fun to do. And everybody on the call, that's our job in order to realize that from a young age. And then the second part of that question, not to be too verbose here, is how do we take somebody that doesn't have the X factor and teach them to do all the things so they can have the X factor?
That's a fantastic question, and that's probably one of the things that I mean that's huge, right? So being able to actually influence somebody that doesn't have the X factor and to have them achieve incredible things. Do you have a response for that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really interesting. I mean, even with Patrick Cantlay, like he's he is becoming a more impressive athlete than he was when he was a young kid, which I have never seen before. Like, he had a break about a year and a half ago, and they were playing all these sports that he wasn't going to get hurt at, but they were shooting basketballs and hitting baseballs, and they were running and watching him work out. And I was pretty amazed at how what a well-rounded athlete that he's made himself, because the game's got more athletic. And we've talked about that a bunch. You know, when he was 13 or 14 or 15, he was still winning everything he played in, but he didn't bash it. Now he bashes it. And when you watch him in the gym, he's a beast in there. When he first started on tour, he was 152 pounds, and now he was 204. And you can't tell it. He looks like he weighs 175 or 180 pounds. So just watching them decide what they need to do to become that part of the equation. And I think many of you are familiar with our wheel, which is the spokes in the wheel that you have to have in order to play. Our job as coaches to decide what spokes make them great and what spokes they don't have, and then how to get those spokes aligned and how to make their weaknesses their strengths and not detract from their strengths by working only on their weaknesses. So there's a lot to that equation, but that's why it's really fun to do the things that we get to do. And that's why I either laugh hysterically when they win a tournament or cry.
That's great. You know, Jamie, you do have one of the just most unique characteristics of a tour coach, in the fact that you have created or have had these relationships with your players for such a long period of time. Can you give one example of one of the players that you coached, and you know, how much do you just let them do what they do? How much do you feel like you have to change? What do you do under a set of circumstances where you are trying to change them, and how do you kind of go through that process?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you got to feel like you're moving them from point A to point B. Running a country club, the most interesting thing during this pandemic is there's no straight lines. You're going through a maze on everything you're doing, whether it's taxes, insurances, or city councils, or whatever. It's very hard to do. But in the actual coaching part of that, I'll also look at it as like we're just trying to move them forward. And as they get better, you get them more and more move forward, and then you start to refine. So the object is just to keep making subtle improvements in every little area. And I think that you're coaching the person. You're not coaching golf. You're coaching the person, and you're coaching them to play golf, understanding what kind of person they're going to be. Because they're going to have to be a person forever. If they happen to be a tour player, that's great. And of those 1,000 people that we probably got the opportunity, probably the more successful thing is maybe the 500 or 600 or 700 that we've influenced to not be tour players that have been great people because of that, and they still have lovely golf games. The tour player becomes rarefied air. That's Top Gun, you know, and especially in this day and age, because the game's gotten better and better and better, whether people talk about the golf ball or whatever. Nicklaus still would be Nicklaus in this time, and so would Snead, and so would be Hogan, based on what I've seen from footage. But if you really think about it, you're trying to get the players that to get the most out of themselves, and you got to figure a plan for them. And a lot of times when I'll talk to those players that are asking us for help with their golf game, and they haven't, they're trying to look for a coach, but we know that we can't coach them. If I talk to them, they didn't know what the plan was for the last couple or 3 years. Our players have to know what their plan is, and the plan is, what is Luke List going to do tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock? And then, by the way, what I see him looking like a year from now. And more importantly than that, when they're in the developmental stages from, say, 8 or 9 or 10 to 21 or 22 years old, you become the biggest influencer, and you got to influence on them everything they're doing there, and you got to let them be themselves. That's one of the things that we pride ourselves on. All our players are different in the way they act, and the way that they look, and the way that they swing, and the way that they carry themselves. And we've kind of let them develop that. And then once they start doing it for a living, you got to realize that they're the CEO of their corporation. You used to be the president of their corporation, and now you slip into an advisor role, and you got to work in the advisor role in whatever manner works best. For example, when I speak with Paul Goidos, I don't watch him hit balls. We sit in a golf cart and talk about his game, and we've been doing that since I was a little kid and he was a little kid. So it's different with everybody. There isn't any set format. That's
great. That's cool. I know that let's see, we're running a little bit short on time, but I do want to ask you kind of a twofold thing, because this was something that it really resonated with me, and I wanted to get your feedback on this based upon your input. And you shared with me that, you know, not there wasn't a golfer, and I'm paraphrasing this, I should probably actually look it up, but there wasn't a golfer in your experience that didn't absolutely love the game to be able to play it at a high level. And I wanted you to kind of maybe share some additional thoughts about that. And then a second fold theme is that if people are wavering or if people aren't in love, you know, is there anything that you've been successful at doing at helping them re-fall back in love with the game, or even love the game more?
Yeah, it's interesting that you asked that, because I always feel like, you know, Pearl Jam, when you see them in concert, they always finish with Yellow Ledbetter. So whenever we speak, we always finish with this, basically the same question that you just asked me is, if you like the game, you get a chance to be good at it. If you love the game, you got a chance to be pretty good at it. If you're in love with the game, you got a chance to be great with it. And there's a big difference between like and love and in love. And in love is no matter what, you're going to try to be great at it. And I think our job as coaches is to give all the tools in our toolbox, be it mentally or physically, the way that we act, the way that we show them, and the way, and that, you know, for example, we've introduced all our tour players to all our tour players, and all our young kids to all the tour players I know that are my friends, and all the tour coaches that I know that are my friends. So there's a wild spirit of influence in order for them to get an idea of what it's all like at the next level. And I think that helps develop them in a level that goes from like to love to in love. I've had players that have retired, and it's when they weren't in love with the game anymore. In love when they didn't want to go out and hit balls when it was raining. They didn't want to hit balls because their elbow was a little sore. They didn't want to hit balls because they wanted to sit on the couch and watch sports, and they've been practicing golf for 30 years. But I've also, you know, got to work with players. If you look at Paul Goddess or John Cook, they were winning, you know, both of them have won Champions Tour events after they were 55 years old. And you can't win a professional golf tournament unless you're in love with the game. Nobody flukes it out there. So that's a really good question. So I think the question on number one is exposure in every aspect makes them be in love with it. And then your job as the coach on a daily basis when they're actively pursuing their profession is to make them be in love with the game. Danny, I think that's got to take us pretty close to time, yeah?
Yeah, that was great. Probably listen, you know, another hour. But does anybody? I saw some questions and comments. Some of them I know. Bill had a real good question about getting back into this, getting back to the golf courses and teaching as far as liability to the golf course or teacher or coach. I don't have an answer to that question. I know you've dived into this a little bit, Jamie. Do you have any insight on this? We'll go get that answer.
Yeah, this is the most technological thing that I say, by the way. Thank God Anthony was here this morning. We wouldn't have been able to get the coach's chat on my computer. But the iPhone here, that's probably our biggest tool. And, you know, we're going to make everybody go through this electronically. And at our club, like, you have an attachment, and you have an email, and you have a DocuSign. So you have 3 ways to tell us whether you're healthy or you're safe to come to the club. And then we're going to do the same thing with golf instruction, where we have an actual waiver that's going to explain more what the golf lesson looks like. And we do this in the video that Anthony will send you all out, where the coach needs to communicate with the student ahead of time. They need to let them know that they're not going to shake hands, just the basics, that the coach is going to be a little farther away, that all the tools that they use, the aim sticks, whatever devices that you're using to teach to make your players better, they're going to be moved out of the way, and the player will go get them. When the coach comes in, the player is going to move back out of the way. If it is a facility that's a private club, you need to work with your human resource and your CFO or the CEO of the club in order to make sure that there aren't any liability issues. And then obviously in a public golf arena, you have to do that. One thing that I was just going to tell the group is, just as far as liability, and this is way before COVID-19, I love the golf instruction in a quiet, simple place with a little bit of room without too many tools or too many devices, because you only have an hour with them. So how many things are you actually going to do? So I think trying to put yourself in a remote place on your property where you can actually coach is going to be great. And then I think in this time, you're going to have to do a lot more, obviously, pre-work before that and a lot more follow-up afterwards. And sometimes just on that really good tool, the text after the lesson that gives them a couple highlights and maybe one swing that you really love, that's probably as simple as anything in order to keep them going. Good question, Randy.
If I could also just add on there, I think one of the things in our benefit is the burden of proof, right? So how can anyone prove that they got an illness from taking a lesson from a particular professional? I mean, most people are out in their daily lives, touching a lot of things, doing a lot of different things. So the burden of proof, I think, is something that's really helpful in our industry, but really anywhere. Just it's hard to tell or to prove anyone got an illness from any one thing.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think like at our property, you know, every day the coworkers got here, you know, they sign a waiver that says that they're not sick and nobody else is. And when you send the lesson out, you'll have them do that as well too. And that way you can at least check those boxes. But in the way that this thing's going, can you get it from the gas pump or can you get it in the grocery store, whatever? That's hard to do. That would be an interesting part. Like I said, we were the first club in the country to close, but now, if so-and-so's on the 17th hole and we find out that somebody's wife has COVID-19, are we going to shut down our property? I'm not sure if that's going to happen. That's an interesting thing going forward and moving forward. And that's why, whether you like the political stuff or not, I like the phases. And we're definitely going to go into what I would call phase one for reopening, or some of you are already in that. We're trying to do that, obviously, in our city.
All right, thanks, Jamie. Thank you, Tim and Jamie, for that. That was awesome, and again, insightful. If you want to hear more about that, again, there is Anthony's going to have all those things where you can reference. One quick thing before we leave: if you weren't tuned in yesterday, talk about insightful and some of the greatest. Josh continued with his virtual series, which included Ted Gleason and Eddie Marions. And if you did not see that or hear that yesterday, that will be also referenced on our website where you can listen to that. And it has a lot to do with what we talked about today. So please see that. I think Josh is on the line. We're going to have one more in the series next week. And Josh, real quickly, tell us what we have to look forward to.
Yep. Thank you, Randy. I'm going to do this in a hot minute. We can call this the new hot minute segment. I have to do this to follow up on what Jamie said. I'm going to read you a quote from Mr. Marins. It has been a great joy and a great honor to teach so many people this game and to help them learn to love it. Students often say thank you at the end of a lesson, but I'm really the one who is grateful because of all those golfers with their curiosity and enthusiasm and their love of the game have enriched my life so deeply. So on that light, I would like to say to everybody on this call, happy Teacher Appreciation Week. It is Teacher Appreciation Week, and I am deeply grateful and honored to be on this in this group with you guys. So for what it's worth, quick piece of business. I didn't get to do this yesterday. Nikki, you know what this means more than anybody else. This is your birthday present. Happy birthday yesterday, Nikki Gatch. We couldn't do that yesterday because we couldn't, but happy birthday to you.
Thank you, Josh.
You're welcome. Next week, our final segment, the topic is disruption creates opportunity, ironically. Jason Halfley is the owner of 1/9 Media. They're a creative ad agency, and we're going to dig into the nuts and bolts of email, social media, Facebook, Instagram. Ironically, one of our topics, Tim, I think you brought it up, is for authenticity. And we're going to talk about how important it is to be authentic. So I'm really stoked that some of our bullet points are hitting what you're talking about today. And just as an overarching thing, I think that this is an enormous opportunity in golf with respect to the disruption that we're all facing. We are a leader and perhaps the leader in outdoor recreation space right now moving forward. And I hope that as much as this all sucks on some levels and we know all the bad sides of things, while we're looking at that same mirror, let's realize that we have a massive opportunity as individuals and as an industry to really do some profound things in our space and capture some market share from others who aren't going to be able to. So let's really put a best foot forward and look forward to playing some small role in that with you guys.
Thanks, Josh. Thank you, everybody. Thank you all, the teaching committee, and almost all of you were on that, and everything that you do to contribute to all of these. So everybody stay safe. We'll see you next week, Wednesday. Next week, Tuesday, for the Youth Summit chat. And everybody be good.
Thanks, Randy.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.